how's it going, everybody? This is Peter from the Bozeman Angler. I'm going to do a quick little video on tying the parachute Adams, arguably the best dry fly there is. So definitely good to have a good amount of these in your box, and we'll see if we can make one of these work. Let's see, I think I'm starting with a 305 size 10 just to make it easy for me, dry fly hook. Go ahead and tie them all the way down into 18s or 20s if you so desire. I'm going to start my thread say 2/3 of the way up the hook shank, and we'll tie in our parachute post first. Just some Wapsi parapost wings usually does the trick. You could use the traditional calf tail if you want. I find that this stuff's a little bit easier to manage, and plus I like bright orange flies that people can see. So just cut off 1 inch of that guy and wrap it around your thread and just kind of sneak it up in there. And just tie it down on the hook shank, and then start building up your parachute post. And once you get a couple of good wraps right around the base, you should be able to start going straight up with it. And since I used 2 puffs of it, I'll hold it together just to give it a little bit more durability. Sometimes it'll fold a little bit on you and you got to go back down. But all you're really looking for is maybe a dozen wraps or so you start to create a little post going up there. There we go. And then, let's see, I'll bring it around one more time. Bring it back down, and we'll wrap back and tie in our tail, do the body, and then I'll do the parachute at the end. Some people like to do it at the beginning, but I find that this way it's out of your way. So you could use just about anything you want for your tail. Traditionally they use grizzly and I think some brown hackle. So I got some old grizzly capes lying around. So take one of these guys and just snip off a small clump of these feathers from the bottom of that. And grab a nice little pinch. And usually I like, just shorter than the length of the shank of the hook for that. So I'll pinch that, switch hands, and tie it in. 1 or 2 wraps to secure it. And then I'll go ahead and leave those long because I'm pretty much just going to cover them up with some dubbing. So Wapsi superfine dry fly stuff I think works the best for this, and your standard rules of dubbing will apply. Less is more. So start with just a tiny little bit on the thread here and tighten that guy up, and then I'll usually slide it down to the shank and start basically covering those feathers with it. And you do want just a slight taper to it, so the first couple of wraps I can just go progressively down the shank of the hook, and then as I get closer I'm going to start wrapping on top of it to build up that taper a little bit. And as you see, as I get down here, I'm just twisting my dubbing back up as it gets down to the fluffy part. What you're looking for is just keeping this dubbing nice and tight around the thread. And then once we get up to our parachute post, let's give this a little bit more bulk. Run around the dubbing, put a little bit more dubbing. I feel like it's obviously always easier to add more dubbing than to take dubbing off, so I usually start with a tiny little bit and then add more as I go. Tighten this guy around, and then I'm going to do a couple in front, and then I'll progressively wrap it back behind, just sort of doing a figure 8, further building up that little, I guess it'd be the thorax, but whatever the front part of the fly you want to call it. And then go ahead and wrap down. And I still need a little bit more dubbing. like that guy to be nice and fat, and the only thing you want to look out for is usually covering up the sides where that parachute post is showing. I think we did a pretty good job so far. This guy, I'll just see if I can further bulk up that dubbing. Perfect. And then I'm going to continue to sort of wrap my thread up to build up that nice little thread base around the parachute post. I don't need to go super high with it. Maybe a dozen wraps or so. That'll make it really nice and comfortable to tie in our parachute hackle. And I totally think it's worth it to buy really quality hackle for parachutes, just because it'll make it easier for you to tie in. And it's a good investment. So like one of my favorites are the Whiting's 100s, just because you get these nice big long feathers, and you can get quite a few out of them. And so what I like to do with these guys is I'll trim just a tiny little bit of those feathers, but I won't trim them all the way down to the stem. Basically what I'm looking for is just a few little spikes coming off there. That way when you go to tie it in at this 45-degree angle, it's going to kind of give your thread something to hold on to there. I'll try the easy way and sneak it back in that way. Versus just the straight stem will kind of slide around. Okay, got a little messy with it there, but that's okay, that'll all be covered up. So then I'm going to take my thread and continue to wrap it back down to the shank of the hook, and I can go ahead and leave this guy long because I'm just going to wrap him down around my little post here. And with every wrap, what I'm doing is kind of using this feather as sort of a guard and kind of sneaking it just below each wrap. And I feel like the more wraps you get in there, the more buoyant your fly is going to be, the nicer that little parachute thing will stick out. So once I get it down to there, I'll try and capture it with one thread wrap, sneaking around all those guys. And then let's tilt this guy over and get it real tight. Trim off the rest of that feather. Do one more thread wrap and then we'll whip finish it. So I'm just going to kind of sneak my whip finish in at an angle, get around to that bite and slide that bite down. And then every time I go down it, still kind of keeping at an angle. I don't want to go too many times around it, so I think that's 3. Let's quit at 3 so I'm not trapping too many feathers down with it. And then I'll just sneak in there and trim off that guy. And let's go ahead and trim down that post. So it's just a nice little fluff ball there, but I'm sort of happy with it. I'll trim off the rest of that stem with it there. And if you really want to make this guy extra durable, go ahead and put a little drop of some UV Cure Flint finish right around that parachute there. I mean, this is an amazing fly, but it's it's not exactly on the durable side, so I'll put a drop of that stuff on and hit it with my UV light, and then that's going to really help that from staying in there. But doesn't have to be too particularly beautiful. It can be a little funky and still fish great. This will basically cover all your mayflies in any size and any color. So here's the parachute Adams. Thanks, guys.